50 years ago, when the Organization of African Unity was formed, leaders of the 30 of the 32 then newly independent African states hoped for a united continent, free from colonial rule and oppression. Today, the Organization of African Unity's successor, the African Union, aims at supporting political and economic integration among its 54 member nations. The AU aims to boost development, eradicate poverty, and raise Africa's status in the global economy. May 25 is celebrated as Africa Day, but with much conflict still to be found within and between African states. As we celebrate a continent characterized by regular attacks on democracy, slow socio-economic development, poverty, and the rising threat of terrorism, we ask, is there anything to celebrate?
There's a lot to celebrate in this continent.
We have enormous amounts of things to celebrate. I mean, so many successes in Africa. I think many a times we get bored or bogged down into seeing that, problems and dramatic events of, girls being hijacked in Nigeria, taking the place.
A good thing about Africa at the moment, in many parts of Africa, because I don't think you can generalize too much, is that there are quite a lot of developments, growth in economies, infrastructure on the ground.
There's an enormous amount of successful things. Africans now, by and large, are living much longer. Economic growth across the African continent has been really rising steadily for the past 10 years.
7 of the fastest top 10 growing economies in the world are African countries.
As we're sitting on some of the most extraordinary riches, that talking about minerals, resources, and so forth, but also human capital.
There are far more conflicts within countries, principally, rather than between countries, but there are far more than there is supposed to be. You know, the whole idea that we are going to dispense with those conflicts as time goes by, it's not really working.
AU is also under enormous amount of strain. My position about the AU is you need a fresher, new leadership. It's a radical way of looking at it, and it completely overall. The style of sense of urgency dealing with the important things has to really change. The AU is too slow in dealing with things. The priorities of Africans are not quite reflected. If you look at the bureaucratic nature of the African Union, it doesn't really help.
Good governance, good politics will help everybody. And there are not enough countries which do have good governance. And by that, what does one mean? One means proper distribution of assets, a fair crack at education and health for as many people as possible. I think we've still got quite a long way to go in many countries.
So I would say that, focus by government on infrastructure, on housing, on roads, on schooling, that will actually help the cause. And it might even accelerate the growth of the middle class.
Poor governance is part of it, but most important, it's the lack of inclusiveness. There's a sense that after you win as a political party or as a group, you would want to take power alone. If you understand democracy, in fact, democracy is not quite the majority rule. It's the ability for the majority to take into account what the minority rights would be. And that's a really important issue. And most African leaders tend to forget it. Very quickly they become authoritarian. They're dismissive of contrarian voices. They usually don't think about tomorrow, the ability to plan forward.
I think the rise of Africa, the time of Africa is now, and the rise of the middle class will certainly drive a lot of great behaviour on the continent.
These are young countries. They are 50, they're as old as the OAU, the AU, the African Union. They're 50, 55 or less years old. So we have to expect there's going to be quite a lot of bumps along the way.
And I think this sort of trend in Africa's economic growth is an extraordinary good news by and large, because we didn't have any good news at all economically. And now that we have it, how do many people celebrate it? by complaining again instead of taking advantage of it.